I don't know when it started. At first, it was just a feeling like someone had their eyes on me. You know that weird sensation when you're walking down an empty street at night and you can just tell someone's watching? That, except it wasn't just outside, it was everywhere. I should probably start with who I am. My name's Ethan Riley. I'm 31 and I work as a night security guard at an office complex. Not exactly my dream job, but it pays the bills. The hours suck, and I sleep during the day, but at least I don't have to deal with people much. I live alone in a small apartment on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a window with a view of the parking lot. Life's pretty simple, or at least it was. The first time I noticed something was off, I was heading home after a long shift. It was around 3 a.m. The streets were mostly empty, except for the occasional car passing by. I was almost at my building when I got that feeling. You know what I mean. That prickling sensation on the back of your neck. I glanced over my shoulder. No one, just an empty street. I shook it off, chalking it up to exhaustion, and went inside. But when I got to my apartment door, my stomach dropped. The lock, it was unlocked. I never forget to lock my door. Ever. My hand hovered over the doorknob. My mind raced. Did I just think I locked it earlier? Was I that tired? I took a slow breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. Everything looked normal. No signs of a break-in. Nothing out of place. Still, I checked every room, the closet, under the bed, even the shower. Nothing. I convinced myself I must have been careless and forgot to lock up before work. That had to be it, right? A few nights later, I got the first message. It was past midnight. I was sitting in the security office, flipping through the CTV feeds when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I see you. My blood ran cold. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. At first, I thought it was a prank, maybe one of the guys at work messing with me, but something about it felt wrong. I texted back, "Who is this?" No response. An hour later, another text. "You left your window open." My stomach twisted into a knot. I had left it open earlier, just a crack, to let in some air before I left for work. But there was no way someone should have known that. I checked the security cameras around my apartment complex. Nothing, no movement. I told myself it was coincidence. It wasn't. A week passed. The messages stopped. I started thinking maybe it really was a prank and whoever it was had gotten bored. Then one night, I saw him. It was around 2:30 am. I was outside on a smoke break, standing by the back entrance of the building. That's when I noticed a man standing across the parking lot near the streetlight, not moving, not doing anything, just standing there. He was too far away to make out any details, but something about him unnerved me. The way he stood too still, too rigid. I watched him for a minute, waiting for him to move. He didn't. I exhaled sharply, flicked my cigarette away, and went back inside. I told myself it was just some random guy waiting for a ride, but when I checked the security cameras, he was gone. Like he had never been there at all. That was the night I stopped sleeping well. Every creak in my apartment made my skin crawl. Every shadow felt like someone lurking just out of sight. Then, 2 nights later, I woke up to a sound, a soft click, like a door unlocking. I shot up in bed, my pulse thundering. My apartment was dark, except for the glow from the streetlight outside. I held my breath, straining to hear silence. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and crept into the living room. The front door was wide open. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a metal flashlight, and checked every inch of the apartment. Nothing. No one. And yet, the door had been locked before I went to bed. I was sure of it. That's when I saw it. Something was sitting on my kitchen counter. A Polaroid photo. I picked it up with shaking hands. The picture was of me, asleep, in my bed, from inside my apartment. I called the cops. They came, checked the place, found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints. They asked if I had any enemies, if I owed anyone money. I told them no. They told me to lock my doors and call if anything else happened. That was it. That night, I didn't sleep. And that's when I heard the breathing. Soft, coming from inside the closet. I sat there, frozen, too afraid to move. I wanted to run, to grab my keys and bolt out of the apartment, but I couldn't, because something inside me knew if I opened that door, he'd be there, and this time he wouldn't be watching. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I woke up the next morning, my closet door was open, just a crack. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new message. No number, no name, just 3 words. You let me in. I first noticed him 3 months ago. It was small things at first. A lingering shadow at the corner of my vision, a shape behind me in store windows, the feeling of eyes on me when I walked home at night. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Now I know better. He's real, and he won't stop. My name is Ethan Reynolds, and I'm 31. I work a desk job at an insurance company, nothing exciting, but it pays the bills. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Seattle, and until recently, my life was pretty uneventful. I've never been the paranoid type. I don't scare easily, but something about this, whoever he is different. He doesn't just follow me. He makes sure I know. It started at the grocery store. I was waiting in line to check out when I felt that heavy, oppressive sense of being watched. I turned my head slightly, scanning the aisles. That's when I saw him. A man, standing at the end of the frozen food section. Tall, wearing a dark hoodie, face mostly hidden by the shadow of his hood, but I could feel his eyes on me. He didn't look away when I met his gaze. Didn't move, just stood there, watching. A chill ran through me, but I forced myself to ignore it. Random guy in a store, it's nothing. I paid for my groceries and left. As I stepped into the parking lot, I glanced over my shoulder. He was still there, standing just outside the automatic doors. Not shopping, not talking to anyone, just watching me. After that day, I started seeing him everywhere. On my way to work, across the street, at my gym, standing outside, hands in his pocket. Once, I saw him through my apartment window across the street, standing in the rain, staring up at my floor. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence. Seattle's a big city. People pass by each other all the time. But it wasn't a coincidence, because every time I looked at him, he was already looking at me. One night, I was walking home from a friend's place. It was late, streets mostly empty. As I turned onto my block, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, steady. I didn't turn around at first. It's just another pedestrian. But the longer I walked, the more I realized the steps were matching mine. When I sped up, they sped up. When I slowed down, they slowed down. My throat tightened. I finally whipped around. No one. The street was empty. I exhaled shakily, rubbing my arms to push away the chill. Then I looked down. A single cigarette butt, still smoldering, lay on the sidewalk, like someone had just been there, watching, waiting, and the moment I turned, they disappeared. The next day, I went to the police. I felt stupid explaining it. There's this guy. He's been following me. They asked if he'd threatened me, if he'd hurt me. He hadn't. So the officer said, "You're saying he's just standing there?" "Yes." "Sir, that's not a crime." I clenched my jaw. He watches me. He was outside my apartment last night. Did he try to break in? No, but then there's nothing we can do. I left feeling even worse. For a week, nothing happened. I started to think maybe he'd moved on. Maybe I was wrong. Then one morning, I found my front door unlocked. I always lock my door, always. I checked the windows. They were locked. No sign of forced entry, but something felt wrong. Like the air was heavier, like someone had been inside. I checked every room, every closet, every drawer. Nothing was missing. But when I opened my bedroom door, the closet was open, and sitting in the center of the floor was a single cigarette butt, still fresh. I bought security cameras that night, set one up facing my apartment door, another in my living room. I went to bed feeling a little safer. The next morning, I checked the footage. For hours, nothing. Then, at 3:23, something moved. My bedroom door opened, slowly. Then, a man stepped into frame. The same dark hoodie, the same shadowed face. He stood at the foot of my bed, watching me. For 10 minutes, he didn't move, didn't touch anything. Then, he leaned closer and whispered something, too soft for the camera to pick up. Then he turned and walked back into the closet. I sat frozen, my heart pounding. I ran to my bedroom, yanked the closet open, empty. I don't know how he got in, or how he got out, but I do know one thing. The police won't help me. I packed a bag, drove to a motel. That night, I left my phone in the bathroom while I showered. When I came back, there was a new note on my screen. I didn't write it. I didn't even touch my phone. It was just there. 4 words. I found you again. I dropped my phone, turned toward the door, and heard 3 soft knocks. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I barely even breathed. Then, after a long silence, a whisper right outside the door. You can't hide, Ethan. I haven't left the room since. And I know he's still out there, waiting, watching, closer than ever. I was running late for work, nothing unusual, but as I hurried down my apartment steps and onto the street, my gaze caught on something. Off, across the road, leaning against a lamppost, was a man. He was wearing a black hoodie with the hood pulled up, hands stuffed into his pockets, head tilted down slightly, as if watching the ground. But I felt his gaze on me. You know that feeling when someone's looking at you, even if you can't see their eyes. It was subtle, just a tickle of discomfort at the back of my mind, but I brushed it off. It's a city. People loiter. I got on with my day. A bit about me, I'm nobody special. My name's Sam. I work a standard office job in it, and I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of downtown. It's not the nicest area, but it's not bad either. I go to work, I go home, I play some video games, watch movies, and do it all over again. Routine, simple. I don't have a huge social life, just a couple of work friends and my younger sister, Emily, who lives a few hours away. Nothing about my life should have made me a target. The next morning, he was there again. Same spot, same hoodie, same posture. I slowed down this time, pretending to adjust my bag strap while stealing a glance. He didn't move, didn't even acknowledge me directly, but I knew he was watching. I felt the first real flicker of unease then. It could have been a coincidence, sure. Maybe he just liked standing there. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe I was being paranoid. But I started to pay attention. By Wednesday, the pattern was clear. Every morning, when I left for work, he was there. Every evening, when I came home, I'd see him somewhere nearby. Sometimes leaning against the brick wall of the building across the street. Sometimes sitting on the bench near the bus stop. Once, just standing at the corner, half hidden in the shadows of a convenience store awning. He never spoke, never moved toward me, never made a direct threat, but he was always there. By the end of the week, my nerves were shot. I started changing up my routine, leaving the apartment earlier, later, taking different routes home. It didn't matter. No matter what I did, I'd spot him somewhere. I tried to talk myself down. He hadn't done anything, hadn't followed me past my street, hadn't approached me, hadn't given me any real reason to be afraid. But fear doesn't need logic. I started double-checking my locks. I bought a bat and kept it next to my bed. Every creak in my apartment made me jump. Every passing shadow outside my window set my heart racing. Then, on Sunday night, something changed. I was in my living room, lights dimmed, mindlessly scrolling my phone, trying to distract myself. It was late, almost midnight, when I heard its soft, deliberate tapping at my front door. I froze. The knock wasn't loud. Not the kind you'd expect from someone delivering a package or a friendly neighbor. It was slow, light, intentional. My skin prickled. I sat there, breath shallow, phone clutched in my hand. I waited, hoping, praying that I'd imagined it. Another tap, and another. I swallowed hard and forced myself to stand. Heart pounding, I tiptoed to the door and pressed my eye against the peephole. The hallway was empty, but my gut twisted because I knew I'd heard it. I stayed up the whole night after that, every light in my apartment on, jumping at every sound, but nothing else happened. Not until Monday morning. When I left for work, he wasn't across the street. For the first time in a week, there was no sign of him. Relief washed over me so quickly, I almost laughed. Maybe it was over. Maybe he'd gotten bored. Maybe I'd been wrong about the whole thing. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. That feeling lasted until I got to work. I was at my desk, settling in, when my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You changed your morning route today. A cold shock ran through me. My fingers trembled as I unlocked my phone. Another text came through. I liked your blue jacket better. I hadn't worn my blue jacket that morning. I'd switched to a black hoodie, like his. I shot up from my chair so fast I nearly knocked it over. My coworkers turned, startled. I barely heard them. My vision blurred. My pulse roared in my ears. Someone had been watching me this whole time. Not just in the street, not just near my apartment, but everywhere. I went straight to the police. They took my statement, nodded in the right places, assured me they'd look into it. If he contacts you again, let us know. That was it. No real answers, no immediate action. I went home feeling worse than before. And when I stepped inside my apartment, my stomach turned to ice. Because on my kitchen table, in the very center, was my blue jacket, folded neatly. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I don't remember locking the door behind me. I just remember sprinting down the stairs, out into the street, gasping for air. I didn't go back. Not that night. Not ever. I stayed with a friend for a while, then broke my lease and moved across the city. Changed my number. Got a security system. And for months, nothing. No texts. No strange figures outside my building. No knocks in the night. I started to believe it was over, until last week. I was walking home late, arms full of groceries, when I felt that tickle of unease. The hairs on my arms stood up. I glanced around. And there, just for a second, across the street in the glow of a flickering streetlight, a man in a black hoodie, standing still, head tilted slightly down, watching, just like before. I don't know when it started. Maybe it was last month. Maybe it was years ago. All I know is that by the time I noticed him, he was already there. My name is Daniel Carter, and I'm 29. I work in it mostly remote, fixing people's technical problems while they yell at me over the phone. I live alone in a small one-bedroom apartment in Chicago. I don't have many close friends, just a few people I meet for drinks once in a while. My life is routine, predictable, wake up, work, gym, dinner, Netflix, sleep, nothing special, and I think that's why it took me so long to see him. The first time I noticed him, it was late. I was brushing my teeth before bed, leaning over the sink, when I glanced up at the mirror, and there he was. A man, standing in the doorway behind me. Dark hoodie, face obscured. I spun around so fast, I nearly fell. But the doorway was empty. The apartment was silent. I turned back to the mirror, heart pounding. Nothing. Just my own reflection, my own wide-eyed face staring back at me. I let out a shaky laugh. Tired. I'm just tired. I went to bed, convincing myself it was just a trick of the light. It wasn't. After that night, I started seeing him more often, always in the mirror, never in real life. At first, it was just quick glimpses, a dark shape behind me when I walked past a storefront window, a silhouette lurking in the corner of my bathroom mirror. But the longer it went on, the closer he got. One night, I was washing dishes. My kitchen has a small window above the sink, and at night, it turns into a mirror, reflecting the dimly lit room behind me. I was scrubbing a plate when I saw him again, standing at the edge of the kitchen just beyond the light. I whipped around, but nothing. I turned back to the window. He was still there. Only this time, he was closer. I stopped looking into mirrors after that. It sounds stupid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that if I looked at him for too long, he would step out. But avoiding mirrors didn't stop him, because a few nights later, he knocked on my door. It was just past midnight. I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard it. 3 soft knocks. Not loud, not hurried, just deliberate. I sat up, heart pounding. My apartment is on the 3rd floor. There's no fire escape, no balcony. There shouldn't have been anyone outside my door. I grabbed my phone and tiptoed to the peephole. Nothing. But when I turned away, knock, 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 I froze. I didn't check again. I just went back to bed, pulled the covers over my head, and lay there, listening to my own shaky breathing. The knocking never came again, but I knew he was still there, waiting. A few days later, my friend Jake called me. "Dude, are you okay?" he asked the second I picked up. "What?" He exhaled sharply. "We were on a video call last night. You don't remember?" I didn't. "You looked off. You weren't talking much." And then he hesitated. "Then what?" I asked, my stomach tightening. He was quiet for a second. "Dude," he finally said, "you got up and left, but your camera stayed on. And I swear to God, I saw someone else sit down in your chair." I felt my hands go cold. "What did he look like?" "I don't know, man." The screen glitched. "But for a second, it looked like you." I started staying at work later, going out more, anything to avoid being alone at night. But it didn't help. Because he followed me. One night, I was at the gym, standing in front of a wall-length mirror, catching my breath. And then I saw him, standing right behind me, closer than ever. I turned around so fast I nearly tripped. Nothing, but when I looked back at the mirror, he was still there, and this time his hood had shifted, enough to see a sliver of his face. It was me. Not exactly, but almost. Like looking at a version of myself that had been stretched, distorted, a wrong version of me. I stumbled back, crashing into a weight rack, and in the mirror, he grinned. That was last week. Since then, every mirror, every reflection, he's there, watching, waiting. And now he doesn't just follow, he speaks. I was brushing my teeth last night, forcing myself not to look up, and then, from the mirror, I heard it. A voice. My voice. But wrong. Daniel. I snapped my head up, and there he was, face to face. He reached out. His hand came through the glass. I ran. I didn't even stop to grab my keys. I bolted out of my apartment and didn't look back. Now, I'm at a motel. There are no mirrors here, no windows that reflect. But I don't think it matters, because just now, as I was writing this, I heard it, soft, from the dark bathroom behind me. A whisper, my own voice. You can't hide, Daniel. I don't know what happens next. I don't know what he wants, but I think I know the truth now. He isn't just following me, he's replacing me. And once he steps out of the mirror completely, I don't think I'll be here anymore.